So, we've done love, joy, and peace. And so now we're going to talk about calmness. And it's always been intriguing to anyone who studies this, that the distinction between peace and calmness, which is very important to understand for what we're doing. Okay, he's fine. Right. So, I was characterizing peace as we're at peace when we're at peace with ourselves, first of all. And calmness is also a profoundly useful aspect of divine awareness. You can see what's happening with all of this is we are taking the mystery out of how to be a channel of God, how to be in tune with God. And that simple word attunement, which I was talking about earlier, about the big radio and the waves being in the room, and all you have to do is, you have to adjust your receptacle. You don't have to create the reality. The reality is always there, trying to express itself through us. I mean, this is why we are born. We are all created by the divine. We are sent into this world to be the instruments of the divine. And we get out of tune with that basic intention. So we don't have to recreate anything. We just have to get back in tune with what we were born to do. And we know that on some level, because whenever we're behaving in ways that is not as love, peace, joy, calmness, we always feel off in some way, don't we? We don't feel fulfilled, we don't feel free. If it was our nature to be dissonant, we'd be very comfortable being dissonant. But there's a part of us, the divine within us, is always trying to get back home, the river to the sea. That's always what's happening. And when we start living more according to this way of understanding, especially and this is where the wisdom aspect comes in, especially when we get clear about what we're doing, then we start flowing with the actual current, with the current of our own inner destiny. Everybody always asks, why was I born? What is my purpose? And we tend to externalize that. I'm supposed to be a dancer, I'm meant to be a healer, I need to have children, whatever it might be. But none of those things are as important. What you do doesn't matter compared to how you do it. Because you can take any external destiny and make a complete mess of it in terms of the actual development of your consciousness and the freedom of your soul. And you can take the oddest life circumstances and make of something magnificent. Just as I was speaking of my friend whose life was, by any ordinary standard, not a success. But the power of faith and cooperation and attunement that came out of that life, not raising her own children and all the other parts of it, the power that she developed from going through that in such a way that she ended up in tune with higher consciousness. So was that life a success or a failure? You see how different it is? And many, many people who have great power in this world, you can tell that they're miserable and their next lives are not going to be better because they're not building anything that's going to make their next lives better. So we have to just turn everything upside down. That's why it's very important to be with like-minded people, because what you get from the society is just crazy. We run a school in Palo Alto based on Swami Kriyananda's Principles of Education for Life. It's a worldwide movement. And we happen to have a school, and it's been there 30 years. And when we were first starting, we went on a field trip to a number of the best schools in our area. And actually, 30 years ago, we would put out certain statements about what we were doing, and then they were good marketing, and the other schools would pick them up. But we had a different, deeper understanding of what we were doing. And here's the example. Went to one of the best other private schools in the area, and in the Palo Alto, Stanford area, believe me, there's a lot that's pretty impressive, or at least has a lot of energy. And so they were teaching children self-esteem. And so a part of what they'd done is they had a little visual display. This was like maybe 5th grade. They had a visual display, and every child put leaves on the self-esteem tree. And the leaf had written on it something that gave the child a feeling of self-worth. There were maybe 30 leaves on that tree. I read every one of them. 29 had to do with some external recognition of a skill that they had. It was something outside themselves, not their nature. I scored the winning goal. I got 100% on the test. I got elected to this position. Nothing wrong with that, except what happens if they don't get elected? What happens if they trip over their shoelace instead of hitting the winning goal? What if they get a debilitating disease and can't do it anymore? What then? One child said, "I'm less moody than I used to be." That's something that will always be with you. That's a power of self-mastery. Self-mastery is what gives us, it's the magnetism, you see. So talking about, and I praise them for at least trying that hard, but I worried about it because I counseled their parents. I know what it's like, I got laid off from my job. My entire self-identity and self-worth is the job I had. Company cut back, I don't have a job. Who am I then? What happens to me? Yes, you see, it's very inefficient, besides being cosmically wrong. So, coming to the concept of calmness, we have to understand it, and I want to emphasize, and I will all the way through, we have to access what we are capable of accessing in the moment when circumstances are beyond we can't change our circumstances. If you're in the presence of something that's, being in 12 years of litigation, you can't change your circumstances. The law grabs you, and you just can't get out of it. And you have to, it has its own, it's a never-ending beast that just runs and runs, and you have to keep going. So you don't have the freedom then to choose an environment that you want. Or if somebody you love becomes ill, if your child has cancer, you can't change your circumstances. So the only thing you have mastery over is how you relate to them. And calmness is one of the extraordinarily, powerful last resorts when everything is out of our control. And it's so interesting how you will, some war hero will be given a medal and he'll have done some extraordinary thing on the battlefield, rescuing injured people or leading people in a direction, that saved their lives, many dramatic things. And how often they'll tell you, and they will speak of the experience, and it's like everything else ceased to exist and all they saw was their objective. Just a deep state of calmness comes in, literally, in the middle of a battlefield. How many great athletes, will tell you when there's 10,000 people in the stands screaming and the other team is trying to stop them from what they're doing, then all of a sudden everything just goes quiet, goes still, and they just move in the direction that they're moving. And things can happen that won't happen when we're like this. Also, if you're talking about tuning your radio and you want to know, what am I supposed to do here? As long as your mind is running in circles and screaming, just help, 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 help. How can you hear anything? And this is why all meditation techniques, almost all meditation techniques, come back to the breath. The most classic way to learn to meditate is by watching the breath. Because when our mind and heart is agitated, our breath is agitated. But just calming the breath automatically calms the mind. I remember I used to be much more emotionally fragile, I would put it, than I am now. I used to cry about things much more easily. It's a great advantage of age. As you can say, I used to. Okay, and there was a period of time when I was trying to manifest the quality of calmness both for my own sake and for everybody who knew me. I was just trying to, calm down. And so I was going to try to do what I knew about breath. And so I was very upset about something, and I was crying about it. So I decided to do just deep, even breathing. And I discovered that you cannot breathe deeply and evenly and cry at the same time. In that particular instance, I decided I preferred to cry. So I just abandoned deep, even breathing because I wanted to cry. But there are so many ways that we can just calm ourselves down. And it's vitally important that we do it, because the power of intuition and higher consciousness happens in stillness. Be still and know that I am God. That's one of the great aphorisms of the world. The still, small voice is how we speak of it. So if our situation is agitating enough that we have to think in terms of calmness, we want to have practiced when it was easier. We want to have trained ourselves not to just run away with whatever starts running through us, but to pull it back to center. On a longer rhythm than just in the moment, I took up the practice of swimming for exercise. It was actually in the middle of the litigation years. We had gone to Los Angeles for some depositions, and we were staying in a hotel, and at the end of the day, and it had just been a crazy day, I didn't have the right shoes to go into the gym. Everybody else was on the treadmills, like this. But I had a bathing suit, so I threw myself in the swimming pool, and I discovered when you swim laps, what is it? Even rhythmic breathing. I even use a snorkel, so it's just a constant breathing like that. And I began to understand that tension, stress, anxiety has a physiological component. And if you can break the physiological build-up, you can break the cycle of anxiety. So for the last 25 years, more dramatically years ago, whenever I would feel my calmness beginning to slip away from me, and I had control over my own schedule, I would, as I put it, throw myself into the swimming pool and just get that breathing, or just run around the block, walk around the block. Just break the cycle so that when you get the habit of victory, you get the habit that I am not compelled by my circumstances. I have a choice. Maybe you can't be joyful. Maybe you really don't love anything about the situation you're in, but you can at least be calm about it. Just this is what we're dealing with. As I've said many times since I've been talking here in this country, you can stand against reality, but reality will always win. You can't make it conform to you just because you want it to. But if we can be calm enough in the face of it, what will happen is we will receive intuition. Again, speaking of myself, for karmic, just psychological chaos, certain things would feel very threatening to me. Just usually, if people didn't accept my ideas. I was very attached to my ideas and very convinced that things had to be done the way I thought they had to be done, or else I don't know what I thought would happen. But I had what I called a panic survival response to situations that nobody else saw as life and death emergencies. And I needed to be able to, again, to break that cycle. So I began to notice that whenever I was moving into that, which was the total loss of calmness, the tone and speed, the tone of my voice and the speed of my delivery, I would go from this to this to this to this, like that. Get much shriller, words would start tumbling out really fast. I mean, some people go the opposite, they go mute. A lot of people around me wish that I would, but I didn't. But I began to realize whenever I hear that tone of voice, Whenever I hear that voice, it makes no difference what I'm saying, I am wrong. Because I have stepped out of the possibility of being attuned to a higher reality, and I'm totally lost in my own world. You see how calmness can serve us? Just the still, small voice of intuition. We have to be still enough that that whisper can hear us. Yogananda has a beautiful book of what he calls answered prayers. He calls it whispers from eternity. I wish he had called it billboards, shouting, exclamations from whispers. But that in itself is a teaching, because we have to attune ourselves, because the divine will not impose itself. When I would teach in California this path, and there would be these masters, people would say, well, I don't want a guru to start telling me what to do and taking over my life. I say, no such luck. If you want guidance from a wiser, higher source, however you define it, you have to calm yourself down and ask for it. If you don't magnetize it, it won't come. So calmness is one of the single most important traits for us to develop because of the world we live in. We cannot stop it. It's moving so fast. But if we can train ourselves to be calm in the midst of it, everything will be different. Okay?
This is a chant called Saint Teresa of Avila's Admonition. And it's just it's what Saint Teresa of Avila used to advise her nuns, among other things. Just about staying calm in the midst of life circumstances and trusting God all the time. So Swami Kriyananda made this chant out of that advice. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you, all things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you, all things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you, all things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you, all things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you. All things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. Let nothing disturb you, nothing affright you. All things will pass, but God changes not. Patient endurance brings you to victory. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. God alone, God alone, God alone's all we ever need. Just want to say about a word in that chant. Once you have God, you'll want nothing more. Want is in the sense of lack. For want of a nail, the horse was lost. You know that old saying? Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. Anyway, once you have God, you'll lack nothing, is what it means. Doesn't mean you won't desire anything, because we still do. But once you have God, you'll have everything. This is a poem by Yogananda, inspired by St. Francis, he said, and put to music by Swami Kriyananda. And feel free to sing along, and or at least chant God, God, God at the end. From the depths of slumber as I ascend the spiral stairway of wakefulness, I will whisper, whisper, God, God, God. Thou art the food, and when I break my fast of nightly separation from Thee, I will taste Thee and mentally say, God, God, God. No matter where I go, the spotlight of my mind will ever keep turning on Thee. And in the battle din of activity, my silent war cry will be, God, God, God. When boisterous storms of trials shriek, and when worries howl at me, I will drown their noises, loudly chanting, God, God, God. When my mind weaves dreams, dreams, with threads of memories, on that magic cloth will I emboss God, God, God. Every night in time of deepest sleep, when my peace dreams and calls joy, joy, my joy comes singing evermore, God, God. God. In waking, eating, working, dreaming, sleeping, serving, meditating, chanting, divinely loving, my soul will constantly hum, unheard by any. God, 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 God.